this is the biggest story of the day, arguably, but you could also make the case Jack Smith, right? This Jack Smith report came out last night. I don't know, Ron, if you've read it in detail, but there's nothing in this report that surprises me. And it goes to the conclusion that if Donald Trump wasn't reelected, there is no question. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence in this report that shows that Donald Trump committed multiple crimes. What are your thoughts of this report?
Yeah, I mean, when Smith dropped the charges, of course, what you had, the MAGA, all the Republicans were saying exonerated. He's vindicated, right? When, of course, this is what Jack Smith was referring to at the beginning of his report, where he basically says, no, Donald Trump has not been, we did not drop these cases because he was innocent or not guilty, or we didn't have the proof. We felt like we had overwhelming proof, and he gave a pretty good outline of, not details, but an outline of generally what that proof was.
Right.
And he said, no, the only reason why we had to drop this was because of two things: the Supreme Court immunity ruling, which went against us, and the fact that Donald Trump was elected president. And, if Donald Trump wasn't elected president, sitting here right now, he would already be in jail, because his sentencing in New York was scheduled for the end of November. It was postponed, but it was originally scheduled for the end of November. And I absolutely believe Judge Mershon was going to put him in jail at that hearing if he lost the election. So, yeah, that's why Donald Trump ran for president, to get out of all these criminal charges, which that worked. And now that he has won, what he is doing is completely shifted his focus on figuring out as many different ways that he can use the presidency to enrich himself and his billionaire oligarch friends.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what we're going to be facing here over the course of the next 4 years. Any other topics? One of my favorite follows on social media. He does such a great job, and it's always a pleasure having him on the show to talk about. Ryan Sheed joining us right now on the program. Mr. Sheed, it is a pleasure to have you. And
it's good.
Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you doing?
Doing good, Ryan.
Well, first off, before we go, the last name is Shed.
Did I pronounce your name wrong? Shed.
Well, first off, people have been doing it since I was in third grade, so don't feel bad.
I'll try.
That's how most people say it. So,
my apologies.
No worries.
Shed.
No worries. And by the way, we don't get a chance to talk in the green room or anything before this, so it's just exactly. Yeah.
This is true. Well, Ryan, sorry about that. I appreciate you being
all
here.
Good.
I think we both agree. I want to start with the fires in California.
Yeah.
The misinformation, the attacks on Gavin Newsom and the mayor, when these people, apparently they're all firefighter experts now. They're experts on water and how to put out fires. What do you make of all the misinformation and so many MAGA Republicans that are trying to score political points here?
Well, I really like what you said leading into this, that it's just become this big political hot potato, and it shouldn't be. And even I've, put some comments out there that you're like, okay, I need to back off of that. People are losing everything. There's been lives lost, I think. I believe that's true. So, of course, we need to keep in mind those things. But it's from the left, my side, it's becoming more and more difficult to have any type of empathy or compassion towards these people. Because as you said, when other times, when other communities need that compassion, that empathy, we don't see it from them. So it becomes more difficult for us as good people to still do that. And I know the argument is, well, we need to go high. I think that time is come and gone. And I think we have enough people on the left covering the high ground. And I think I'm going to stay down here and lead the charge down a little lower, and we'll see what happens. But as you said, I think the most important comment that needs to be made is nobody wants to see this. This is devastating. And I definitely don't want to be part of playing the politics. Yeah. But as you said, and getting back to the question, we can't ignore the misinformation coming out. One of the biggest ones I saw, and I posted on my Twitter, was a guy saying, oh, my brother's a firefighter up in Oregon, and he just told me that they're stopping 70 fire trucks because of emissions from going into California, which, of course, the organization that he claimed his brother worked for came out and totally debunked it, which I shared. And so it's just like, you guys you have no shame. You will use anything as long as you can twist it for some type of benefit for either Donald Trump or your MAGA agenda.
I agree. And Ryan, you had reposted something on your Twitter page of the donations from some of these bigger companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Apple, and others that have donated in upwards of $1 million or more to Donald Trump.
Yes.
And no money. They haven't donated so far any money to help the victims in LA. And then you just put up Taylor Swift, $0 to Donald Trump, $10 million to the LA fires. And by the way, there's a lot of other celebrities and big names that are doing the exact same thing. And kudos to them. And then you have James Woods. Speaking of celebrities, now I've always said James Wood is a despicable human being, but I don't wish any of this stuff upon him, right? And when I saw that interview on CNN that he did, I played it and I said, listen, I feel for the man, I feel for his family. And then it turns out his home didn't even burn down.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, all he's doing all day is tweeting out stuff about Gavin Newsom and the mayor of LA. His home didn't even burn down. He lied on CNN.
Yeah. And a big shout out to James Woods, who blocked me a year ago for calling him out for something else.
Blocked me too, Ryan. We have that in common.
We have that. It seems to be common around us liberals. But no, so I can't sit here and be a hypocrite. When I said that I posted a few things that I probably should back off of, that was one of them. Right. Again, and I said something along the lines of, I've seen so many hateful things come from that man through his social media that I don't have any compassion for him. And as you said, then to find out that he was clutching his pearls and crying when he didn't even know for sure if his house was gone or not. So here you are, where so many people were focused on James Woods. Well, there's actually other people and other celebrities losing their houses, and
sure,
he didn't even lose his. So again, it's just, these people are willing to grab onto anything. And if they think that he can use it to, raise money, get attention, whatever it is that they need to feed their ego with, they will use it.
And I think of other celebrities out there, and there's plenty of them, but just to name one, Angelina Jolie, who's not only helping people and raising money to help the victims, but she's put literally dozens and dozens of displaced people in her home, strangers, people she doesn't even know, which I think is so admirable. And I get so angry, Ryan, when I see the Elon Musks of the world. Now, I know he's doing some things to help people, but this is a guy who donated literally $250 million to Donald Trump's campaign. How much money has he donated to helping the victims? This is the richest man in the world. And I see all these other people on the far right all day long, popular Twitter accounts from conservatives, whether it be a Jack Posobiec or others, all they do all day long is attack Gavin Newsom to try to get engagements on Twitter and make money for themselves. And I just think it's so despicable.
It is, I think with all of us on social media, content creators, whatever you want to call us, we're trying to make money. There's a way to do it. There's a right way to do it. Everybody's time is worth something. Yeah. That said, we know why Elon Musk purchased this social media platform. A lot of people pointed it out at the time. Unfortunately, we were not only correct, but it was probably worse than we thought. And I'm glad you brought that up, because we were talking about this on our podcast, Hold the Mic, this past week, was the $250 million. That's how much money we could track. And what I mean by that is, and the shout out to Ian for bringing this up, was there were also funneling money to right-wing extreme accounts through Twitter X, and I was getting paid. So now the interesting part was, some of these big accounts posted how much they were making, and I would look at their following and I'd be like, my following's almost as big as yours, but you're bringing in $10,000 a month and I'm bringing in $300 a month. Why is that? So, and then he switched how we got paid as soon as the election was over. So I went from making $300-$400 a month on there to making $30-$40 a month. And then he upped the fee to pay for the blue check mark to $30. So now I'm not even getting paid enough to cover the blue check mark. So I just canceled it. But what he would do was he would funnel the money through there, and these people would get $10, $20, $30, $40,000 put in their account every 15 days. And they were posting it. They were oh, look at this. And it's like, oh, you guys are getting a lot of money to spread the propaganda you're spreading, and to pay for the bot farms that are pushing this agenda. It's really insane when you sit down, and because I'm involved in some of the little inner workings, it's just really eye-opening as to how blatant this misinformation press tour really was.
Incredible, because you have a very large following on social media, and you're not the first person to tell me this. People that have 20 times the following that I have, even in the millions, are making peanuts on X. Peanuts.
Yep.
You go on YouTube and other platforms, they're making much more money. Let's be real about this. Elon Musk is stealing money from people. Even
100%.
some people on the right that have large platforms are making peanuts. So I find that very, very interesting. But this is who Elon Musk is. I wanted to switch topics. If you're just joining us, Ryan Shedd joining us on the show. I pronounced your last name right. Hopefully
that's appreciate you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, all good, bro.
I wanted to talk to you about John Fetterman because we might have the same opinion here. I don't know what your opinion is on this, but there are reports now that, as you know, that Fetterman is going to be meeting with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. I got to be honest with you. I don't have a problem with this.
Really?
I really don't. The reality of the situation, this is my take, and I want to get yours.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Donald Trump's going to be the president. He's going to be here for 4 years. Doesn't mean you have to kiss the ring. I don't think Fetterman is going to do that. At least I hope not. To have a conversation with him, to me, is better for the country than not having a conversation at all. Now, listen, I don't think he's going to do what like a Kevin McCarthy did or some of these MAGA Republicans. I think Fetterman is there for the same reason why he spoke to Stefanik is, listen, I represent everybody in Pennsylvania, and I want to meet with people on the other side and have conversations. I personally don't have a problem with it. What is your take on it, Ryan?
I think if it was just by itself, I probably would be okay with it. And I think where you and I might disagree is the ring kissing part. Mm-hmm. I think him going down to Mar-a-Lago is the ring kissing.
Really? Okay.
Yes. I think you want to have a discussion with him? Cool. Have it up in Washington, D.C. where everybody else does business. Mm-hmm. And by the way, could you maybe put on a shirt and tie, maybe a coat when you meet with the president?
The fair criticism.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, but that's not the only time he stepped out of pocket and made liberals go, what? Yeah. He literally has
doing this. Why do you think he's doing this then?
Well, I think you're on point. I think he lives in Pennsylvania. You know, it's a red area. You know, it's a red state. And even if it's purple, like you said, he's still got to play both sides of the fence. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Like you said, at some point we're going to have to put the swords down. Yeah, right. I don't think it's right now. You know, I think the fight is we're still in the middle of it. But at some point we are going to have to look at each other and say, okay, this is over. This isn't getting us anywhere. It's just driving us further down in debt, further down in holes, into more wars. Like, let's figure this out now. And I think that Fetterman's approach is how we get there. But right now, where we are, knowing that we just elected or we just certified an election for a felon and an adjudicated, we all know what, it's like that part to me is mind boggling. So
can I ask you about that too?
Yeah, please.
So the comment, which, adjudicated rapist is the comment that many people on the far right say is not true and it's wrong. And my explanation, and I know you've talked about this too, my explanation to it is this. As you know, he's a liable sexual abuser. Yes. The judge presiding in the case characterized it as rape.
Yes.
And I believe the only reason why George Stephanopoulos got sued, but the only reason why they paid it off, I believe, is so they could get an interview with Donald Trump. They got an interview with Donald Trump a couple days later. That is not a coincidence. So I believe they paid out this amount of money in part because they had some sort of agreement behind closed doors where they would get that next interview with him. That's what I think. Now, if he wants to sue everybody for calling him an adjudicated rapist, the judge characterized it as rape. He's a liable sexual abuser. And I think that's extremely factual.
Yeah. To somebody in the comments said, have I ever thought about wearing blue? I do have a blue. I just wore it the other day. So, but no, here's the thing. Everybody in my comments when I say, because I post it several times a day. By the way, go to my social media, everybody, especially on Twitter, Mr. Community Notes, Elon Musk, and see how many times I've been community noted for stating this exact fact. And since you said the word, I'm going to assume it's okay we say it. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. He is an adjudicated rapist. He is an accused P to the D to the O. He is also a prolific business fraud who has had to pay out for defrauding Americans. I can't tell you how many times. 25 million Trump University, $30,000 for the $3.1 million fraud scheme in 1992 at the casino with his father. Go look it up. Google me. Don't just listen to me. I'm not trying to start a cult. I just want you to be educated. So the fact of the matter is that this dude is going to take the White House. We all know what he is. And every 77 million person American out there that voted for Donald Trump knows that he is a felon, that he is a rapist, that he has been accused of raping a 13-year-old girl. And if you are willing to vote for that because of the economy, then we do not have a difference in political opinions. We have a difference in morals and principles.
I agree with everything you just said, Ryan. And I think Nancy Mace, and you could tell me if you disagree, it's a perfect example of where the MAGA Republican Party is at, right? I mean, you know, she claims that she was raped when she was 16 years old.
Yeah.
There are over 25 women that have claimed, allegedly, that Donald Trump sexually abused them or raped them, including his ex-wife in court documents in a deposition.
Yes, sir.
So she doesn't want to believe those 25 plus women. She supports Donald Trump. And then if you bring that up, somehow you're shaming her. She's the one who tweets 1,000 times about how she's so proud about how one of her trans woman coworkers can't use the woman's restroom. She's so proud about that. She's campaigned off of it and sold shirts about that.
Yeah.
But then after like a school shooting or something, you're lucky if you get one tweet from her, thoughts and prayers.
Yep. You know, it's never about protecting the children. It's always about political agenda with her. And I just want to give a shout out to my transgender family out there. You guys have given me the space to educate myself and become a better ally. And I hope that we can spread that in the coming years. It's very sickening for me I think because I've made friends with so many transgender folks over the last 4 or 5 years purposely, that it has become very personal for me. So it's like every time she comes out and says one of these things, I'm in the comment section every time telling her exactly what you just said. Right. Like this coming from the woman who just put a rapist and an accused, you know, pedo in the White House. Like he's a felon. He's a criminal. He's a fraud. He's been a fraud for 30 years. This isn't anything new. We all know it. He's got court documents going back 30 years saying he's a fraud. And we just let him continue to do it. And we keep putting him in higher positions. Like this dude is literally the perfect example of failing up in the United States.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I agree with you. And like I said, this is where the Republican Party is at today. I think Nancy Mace is a perfect example of that. She was against 100%. Donald Trump, but then when she needed Donald Trump to get into office, she needed his support. She kissed the ring, and that's where most of the Republican Party is at today. How much concern do you have? I mean, coming up here, we're going to have these hearings when it comes to Pete Hegseth, when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard, when it comes to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and others. How concerned are you that they are actually going to be put in these positions? I actually think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to make it. I don't know about Pete Hegseth. Boy, I hope Tulsi Gabbard doesn't get in. I do believe she's a Russian asset. How concerned are you, Ryan, about these people that are so unqualified for these positions?
You know what's sad is as you were laying that out, you know, Robert F. Kennedy will probably get in. Let's hope Hegseth doesn't. And oh my God, hopefully Tulsi. That's really the perfect rundown of what we're looking at. You know, most of us, it's like, we don't want Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Like the dude that's got a brain worm that long ago starved is definitely not our guy. But unfortunately, we'll take him over the Tulsi Gabbard, who's on the no-fly terrorist watch list, for those of you who don't know.
That's very true, actually. A lot of people don't even realize what you just said. Yeah, you're right. She is. Yep. For a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and she keeps asking, well, what's the reason? Like, they've told you a few times now. Like, you can keep asking, but they keep telling you, and you just don't want to believe it. Yep. Like, you know, it's just insane to me that in 2019, 2020, when I really started doing this social media thing, that when we looked at Tulsi Gabbard, the things that were being said about her at the time, some of them seemed so outlandish that you're like, that can't be. Like, there's no way somebody makes it on the stage at a Democratic primary for president and these things are accurate.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then you watch what happened, like right after that, and it was just like, oh, I guess we were wrong, and she is exactly who they said she was. Like, nobody runs from the Democratic Party as fast as she did and do as little as she was doing for fellow Democrats in the Democratic Party, and then literally flip over to the MAGA Trump Party and instantly start running ground game for extremist Republicans.
Yep.
Like, it was very clear that she was never really a Democrat. She never bought into the Democratic Party. So, and then you don't become an independent and say, I don't believe in either. You just go way over to the right and start saying, yeah, that guy over there, the rapist, the felon, that's my guy. So
Yeah.
who's paying you then?
That's a very good question. And this is Gabbard. And Gabbard, she has failed to call out Assad. In fact, she's defended Assad in some situations. I believe, like many, sadly, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, in the MAGA Republican Party, they don't want Ukraine to win. Trump wouldn't even answer that question on a debate stage, a presidential debate. Can you believe it? I mean, you have an evil, murderous dictator that invaded a country.
Yep.
And there's a portion of the Republicans who won't even say they want Ukraine to win because they don't. I mean, it's crazy. I wanted to ask you this because I think you have to deal with, probably multiply it by 10 of what I have to deal with, the trolls on social media, people that'll use the term soy boy and homophobic slurs and you're a pedophile.
Hourly, bro. Hourly.
Yeah, I get it all the time too. And I laugh at it and I ignore it, and I'm a much happier person because of it. But what do you make of it? Like, so many of these people, even people that call into this show every day, they're not able to have a conversation based on fact.
Right.
What do you make of this? I think 10 years ago, we were able to have these conversations with people. Now it's like so many people are so far gone.
First off, I think you're probably a lot happier than I am because I don't ignore as much as you do.
I don't always.
I know, but I bite a lot of low hanging fruit. No, that's a really good point. And I think I have personal conversations along those lines a lot because I still have Republicans in my life. They're just not Trumpers. I don't, like I said, we can debate politics all day. Like, we can debate policy. We can debate where our money should be going. We can debate, the deficit. I have no education. Let's debate those things, but let's have honest, good faith conversations about it. Let's not keep playing politics with it and get nothing done, which is what's been going on for at least 15 years. Yeah. And in terms of these conversations, again, as you said earlier in the program, Donald Trump is going to be president, whether we like it or not. We can keep holding on to these hopes that something is going to come out to change the election, to show that he didn't get the 77.8 million votes that he did. If that happens, great. But if I really don't think it's going to. So I think, as you said, we have to just accept the fact that this is going to be the guy for the next 4 years. And we're going to have to either be ready to work with him in some way, shape, or form to get something done for the American people, or we're going to have to be ready to fight to stop his agenda cold in its tracks. Yeah. But we need to grasp that reality, and we need to grasp it soon. These good faith conversations that everybody wants to get to, we're not going to get to them. We're not going to get back to them as we used to be able to until, as you said, we can find reasonable people willing to have good faith conversations using facts and data. That's really it. And the issue is when 77.8 million people voted with their emotions and misinformation instead of intelligence and knowledge.
Very well said. Very difficult to have those conversations with certain people that believe fires are started by Jewish space lasers. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ryan, you're the best, my friend. I love following you on social media. Whether you have a blue check mark or not, I don't care. You're a great follow. Keep up the great work, my friend. Always appreciate it. I got to do your podcast one of these days, my friend. But
you're always welcome on Hold the Mic, brother. Anytime.
Love to do it. Ryan Shedd, appreciate your time, my friend. Keep up the great work, and
Thanks,
we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Same.
That's Ryan Shedd, everybody. Great follow on social media. He does a wonderful job in calling out the far right and hypocrisy. To an extent, he does what I do every day, and I really appreciate him, and I appreciate him taking the time to join us. So I want to start. Let's start with the Pete Hegseth testimony. Yeah. It appeared to me, Ron, that Republicans wanted to talk about DEI hires and the Afghanistan withdrawal, didn't really ask Pete Hegseth much of anything. And the Democrats were doing what I thought they should have done, and they did do it, and questioned him on his judgment. It seemed like Pete Hegseth didn't want to answer any questions directly. What are your thoughts on it as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, there were some consistent themes throughout the hearing. There were a few things that stood out to me. First of all, obviously, Hegseth knew that Trump was watching because he spent most of the hearing praising Donald Trump. I think he mentioned Trump's name like 300 times. So even though the hearing was theoretically supposed to be about him, He kept bringing up Trump. And I think what he was doing there is he was sending a subliminal message to the Republican senators on the committee and elsewhere saying, I'm Trump's guy. If you vote against me, you're voting against Trump. So he was basically laying down that marker. One of the things that really struck me about, of course, I went into his alcohol abuse, his abuse of women, the fact that he's never run any organization very big. And the one that he did run was the charity that he was removed for financial mismanagement and constantly having to be carried out of events passed out after passing out drunk, and also having a sexual harassment lawsuit filed against the organization as well from a woman who was apparently taken to a strip club and harassed by one of the other members of the charity. But, the two things that disturbed me the most about his testimony, and by the way, I thought some of the Democrats were not very good. Some of the Democrats were okay. I thought that the one that stood out to me was Alyssa Slotkin from Michigan. I thought she was excellent. But I thought some of the other ones, to be honest with you, weren't very good.
I thought Kane was okay. What do you think about Kane? I thought he did a good job.
Who?
Kane.
Yeah, Kane was good. I would say Kane was second best, and probably Mark Kelly, who focused on the alcohol stuff, was probably third. In my opinion, those were like the top three throughout. I thought Slotkin was good because he kept trying to interrupt her and she wouldn't let him. So I thought that was good. But the things that stood out to me that really bothered me about his testimony was on the war crimes issue. He is one who lobbied Trump to pardon some guys who were convicted of war crimes whose fellow soldiers turned them in and testified against them that they had committed war crimes. And Hegseth is against all war crime prosecutions. And he even said, we need to defer. We need to stop listening to the lawyers and the people in the Pentagon who put in all these rules of engagement to minimize civilian casualties. We need to trust the war fighters. He actually used the word, we need to defer to the war fighters when it comes to war crimes. In other words, basically just anything goes, whatever they want to do, they need to do, which sort of made me think of Lieutenant William Cawley back in Vietnam, who, I think single-handedly killed like 105 civilians in a village and was prosecuted for war crimes. And that was a big thing where a lot of Republicans were defending him back in the day, in the 70s. He kind of reminded me of those people who were defending Cawley back in the early 1970s. So that was one thing that stood out to me. The other thing was the questioning about Mark Esper and them pointing out like that, Trump wanted to use bring in the 82nd Airborne and shoot protesters in the leg in DC. And Esper refused those orders and said that violates the Constitution. I'm not going to do it. And Trump fired Esper very shortly after that, after almost like 2 weeks after he did an interview and apologized and said it was a mistake how they handled themselves during the DC protests with Trump holding up the Bible and stuff. Trump fired Esper. And so this guy, Hegseth, was asked, like, what would you do if Trump ordered you to do something illegal like this?
Right.
And he just basically just said, I'm going to do what Trump tells me to do. So I thought those were the two things that stood out to me. The alcohol stuff was, I thought, a little bit surprising how he handled that. Some Democrats, I've heard them say, the alcohol issue is not really an issue. That shouldn't be brought up. There's other more important things, but I do think it's an issue because look, we're talking about a guy who had 10, 12 booze bottles in his office that are we've pulled photos of different years where there's different bottles. So there's a constant rotation of liquor bottles going in and out of his office that are like half full. He claims he's never drank at Fox, but he's got, a dozen half empty liquor bottles in his office. He's had many, many Fox employees who have said he showed up to work drunk, hungover on the job. Many different employees for the charities that he worked in say that they had to carry him out of events passed out drunk. So, and he denied all of that. So those are the things that stood out.
I think he has a lot in common with Judge Jeanine, but I'll leave that one alone. What do you make of the fact that not that long ago on a podcast, he says he doesn't believe that women should be serving on the battlefield, But yet now all of a sudden we're led to believe that he just changed his mind and he had a change of heart. I mean, obviously the only reason why he's changing his tune a little bit now is because he wants to get this position. But how could anybody believe he's being honest in saying that today?
He wrote it in his book last year.
Right.
His book came out last year, and he said women should not serve in combat, period. And he used some pretty insulting language while saying that, basically just suggesting that no woman is capable of serving in combat. And he changed his position for one reason. Joni Ernst is on the committee. She's a senator from Iowa. She served in combat herself. Right. She's also a sexual assault victim, and he's been accused of that as well. So she was seen as the biggest problem for him, in terms of if she came out publicly against Hegseth, he was in big trouble. And so Hegseth basically went into her office and just took back everything he ever said about women in combat. And I guess now we're just supposed to believe that he's like had a change of heart on all this when everybody knows he's just saying that because Joni Ernst has made him come out and publicly said that. But can we rely on this person to not be discriminative on promotions and all of that of women? Absolutely not. I mean, we know what he thinks.
Ron, if he actually gets confirmed, and I certainly want to get your opinions on that. I don't even know what's going to happen here, but if he does, hypothetically speaking, what does it say about the Republican Party today?
Yeah, well, Joni Ernst, I think, is going to support him because all of MAGA realized that she was the problem, and they all just went, they focused in on her, John Cornyn, and a few others. And that this is the problem when you have only 2 or 3 Republicans who are kind of been identified as going against Trump, then they can all focus on those handful of people and bring a lot of that pressure and the threats and all of that to bear on them. And, they curl up in a ball and they give in. And that's what I believe has happened with her. So I think that what you might see is 1 or 2 Republicans vote against Hegseth, but I also think you're going to see 1 or 2 Democrats vote for Hegseth. And so I think he'll, be confirmed by 5 or 6 votes.
Unbelievably scary that this is the guy that's going to have the nuclear codes along with Donald Trump. I mean, it's unbelievable. A guy that was a weekend anchor at Fox News.
He has pledged, though, that if he is confirmed as Secretary of Defense, he will stop drinking. So we have that.
Yeah. Okay, so Will, let's talk a little bit about Pete Hegseth. A lot of people have been talking about Pete Hegseth. There are millions. I respect his service, right? I know you do as well. There are millions of people that have served that I think would be more qualified than him. We can get into his checkered past. We don't have to dive deep into it, but I think it's very troubling from a decision-making perspective. Cheated on your first wife with your second wife. Cheated on your second wife with a Fox News coworker. Had a child with her. Cheated on your third wife. A lot of, I don't know whether he's an alcoholic or not, so I don't even want to talk about that. But the fact that he ran a business into the ground already with less than 100 people, that's also troubling. Am I wrong in being
troubled? That's not my understanding of what happened with that business at all. I mean, I have a colleague, Mark Lucas. This is a concern, Veterans for America. I don't. I'm pretty. In my understanding with Mark, who was a high-level official of the Concerned Veterans of America, before he came to the Article 3 project, he said Pete did a wonderful job and was very competent, and and that their organization was actually very effective. I mean, it was primarily like a policy advocacy organization on behalf of veterans. They got a few big pieces of legislation passed, is my understanding. So I think this reporting, certainly on that front, I just don't think it's true. I think it's just wrong. That's like a smear. As for his personal conduct in his marriage, I don't think that's anything to admire. Obviously, I don't think he would say it's anything to admire. But at the same time, what's good for the goose is good for the gander here, guys. I mean, Tim Kaine made a huge deal out of that during his speech in the confirmation hearings.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, 3 months ago, he was on the campaign trail gleefully hamming it up with Doug Emhoff, who impregnated his nanny and forced her to get an abortion while married.
No, I saw that. I saw you tweet about that. I wanted to actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you about that. So obviously, as you know, Doug's not in any administration.
Sure.
Doug's not running for, Doug's not going to have the nuke codes. We all know that there's only two people in this country that will. That would be Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump. So, you know, as far as Doug's past, sure, he has a checkered past with women. I don't think any reasonable person would deny that. But he's also not running for Secretary of Defense, right?
Yeah, but I mean, he's the first. He's still also he'll be in the White House. He would be the first husband, right? And
Right.
that's not this
Could have been the first husband.
That's
right.
a hugely influential position, and you're putting somebody who's, you know, voluntarily in a marriage with that. Like, I can't. I'm sorry. The left's you know, the way that the left treated all this stuff, and this isn't new. This has been going on for decades. This is all the way back to Bill Clinton, who was credibly accused of rape, right? You know, what's good for, I'm sorry, I can't take the Democrats seriously on this front as like the arbiters of moral.
Right. I can only speak. I hear you, Will, and this is why I wanted you on to talk about this. I don't defend Bill Clinton. I would never vote for Bill Clinton. I'm going to say this on the record. I believe Bill Clinton in his life has done some very bad things to women. I certainly would not deny that. Okay. I also did not vote for Hillary. That wasn't the reason why. There were other reasons, but I just don't think Pete Hegseth is a good guy. His own mother called him a woman abuser. Now I understand years later, she goes on Fox News and cleans it up. She never denied that he never abused women. She said he's a different man now. So my question to you is, why is it all of a sudden Donald Trump chooses him to be his Secretary of Defense, and then he finds God? Why is it people find Jesus and they all of a sudden find God like they lost their wallet and they found their wallet?
I don't think that's an accurate characterization of Hegseth's religious kind of. I'm not a religious person myself, so I don't.
Neither am I. Neither am I. Right.
But like it seemed like it. I'll take his, you know, newfound, you know, awakening seriously. I don't think it's, you know, I didn't start this year. It seems like, you know, the conduct that was in question was something like 2017, 2016, I don't know, something like that.
It was years ago. Yep.
That's a long time ago. So I give him credit. I think it seems like he's been happily married, and the conduct that he was engaged in 7-8 years ago has stopped. Good for him. And here's the other thing. I'll say this about Hegseth too. And I think in the confirmation hearing, one of the things you saw was he does have a lot of talent, right? Like the guy's very, very articulate, very, very smart, in great physical condition, which I think is a good thing for somebody who's the Secretary of Defense. Like, I think there's something to be said for the guy who's running our military and expects the standards all the way down the line to be held up, for that guy to be capable of cranking out 250 push-ups in a morning. That's a good thing.
He's in good physical condition. I certainly, he's not very good at throwing axes. I think we all can agree on that. He's not very good at that. All right, let me bring this up, because I also find this interesting, right? As you know, he said on a podcast in the past that he did not want women to be on the battlegrounds, right? Which I find repulsive. I think it's absurd what he said back then. All of a sudden,
specifically in combat,
right? Correct. Specifically in combat, which I absolutely disagree. There are some tough women out there that are much stronger than me. Now, all of a sudden, he changes his tune. All of a sudden, when Donald Trump chooses him, he goes from, I don't want women serving on the battlefield in combat, to, I'm open to it now, because he has a meeting with this female Republican who was not going to vote for him, and now all of a sudden is, because he changes his mind. I'm not buying it. I think the only reason why he changed his mind is so he can get affirmed. That's my opinion. Where am I wrong?
Politics. Welcome to politics. Sometimes you come in with a set of beliefs,
right?
And you're told that, you know, if in order to, you're going to have to make some compromises along the way. I mean, I disagree with your premise, at least when it comes to frontline combat roles. I don't think it's appalling to suggest that, at least with frontline, you know, infantry and artillery roles, that, you know, a flat ban on women is probably unnecessary. But like, you know, I mean, the number of women in the country who could probably meet, say, for example, the Navy SEALs fitness standards, and would have the willingness to do it. Like, if you actually understand what those standards are, and and combine that with the willingness to do it, the number of women we're talking about is probably single digits.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you.
And that might be, you know, it might be small single digits. We're talking like 1 or 2 women in the country who might be.
Well, I don't know if it would be that small. I'm not an expert, but I don't disagree with you that there would be more men that would be able to be qualified.
I guess the analogy would be, I mean, think about one of the there's two big sports analogies that I like to bring up in these conversations, right? The
Okay.
first is the fact that the under 15 men's soccer team, like an under 15 club team, beat the women's national soccer team, right?
Sure.
And when there's this also the example of when Serena Williams and Venus Williams challenged like
Absolutely.
a top 300 tennis player and got smacked around 6-1,
Right.
6-2. Right. Like, so there's sort of the gap, especially at the top level, between men and women. Like once you start is extremely dramatic. And so yes, there's much, obviously there's women much stronger than you or I.
I don't again, Will,
special forces are dramatic.
I don't disagree with you. That's why you don't see any women that are playing in men's professional sports, because they don't have the abilities to do so. And I would welcome it if they want to try. But the bottom, all I'm simply saying, and I think we sort of agree, is that there are probably some, might be few, but some women out there that could pass those challenges. And if they're willing to serve this country honorably and risk their life, then I don't see any reason, if they can pass those standards, to do so. And I didn't like his comments on that podcast. And but I think we agree as a whole. And I don't disagree with your sports analogies at all. I talk about that all the time. It's why I don't think that transgender women should have any place playing with naturally born women on the playing field. I think it's absurd. And even though there are only 10 or 15 college athletes that are trans women, over 6,000 athletes, it's still wrong, right? And I don't think.
And the funny thing is, actually, there's an interesting. I know we're a little sidetracked, but there's an interesting. How one single trans athlete in women's volleyball completely collapsed like the entire conference's volleyball schedule. I don't know if you remember that, but it's like
I do. Are you talking about San Jose State?
San Jose State, right? It's like every single team that conceded and was like, no, we're not going to play with this person. It's actually dangerous for us, right? This person's spiking a volleyball in our face.
I don't disagree with you. And this is where I agree with Republicans on this issue. And by the way, most Democrats, I think, probably agree with us, right? There might be a small percentage that don't.
I think this is an 80-20 issue. I think you find the hardcore left would disagree, but most.
I think most of us agree on this. But let me ask you a question. Just as we agree on this issue, I think what Nancy Mace is, and I know we're kind of getting on a tangent here, but I think it's a good conversation. I think what Nancy Mace is doing, tweeting hundreds of times about a female colleague using a female restroom, and talking more about those issues than gun violence.
Female, right? Male, but you trans.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about someone who is born male, transitioned to a female, whatever. Listen, I consider a man if he's born a man. I consider a woman if she's born a woman. But I will still call you he, she, because I don't care. I will respect you, and I don't know why people care about that. But Nancy Mace sees this as such a threat. And my argument is, show me evidence that a trans person in a bathroom is more likely to commit a crime than anybody else. There's no evidence to back that up. Now, I know she says, well, it makes me uncomfortable. Guess what? There's a lot of things in life that make us uncomfortable. It doesn't mean we should ban people for doing things. And I get frustrated with somebody like a Nancy Mace, because when it healthcare, gun control, thoughts and prayers, one tweet, let's move on to the next. But when it comes to trans women in bathrooms, she's literally still talking about it. It's been like 2 months.
I mean, she wants to make it her pet issue. I think it's a reasonable thing to do. Honestly, I'm sympathetic to women who say that we fought a long time for female-only spaces and variety of contexts, and suddenly we're going to give them back. I mean, I think the proper way to evaluate the trans rights movement is it's the most successful male rights movement in American history. It's the one movement that had the effect of eviscerating many of the protections that women benefited from for many years. So I don't begrudge her doing that. And I think, so the funny thing is, you mentioned this thing where it's like you're like, okay, you believe in the biological binary, but then when you want to be polite to people and respect them by their pronouns, which that is actually the position I used to approach it with. I don't do that anymore. I've actually affirmatively changed my mind to say, like, this request for politeness is actually 95% of the time the sort of tip of the spear for in essentially assessment that you ought agree with my political viewpoint on this question. And so I think that
I guess for me, I just really don't care. It doesn't affect me. I would ask you, like, how does that affect you negatively in your life?
I mean, the cultural things, like, you see this starting to happen. You see it happen dramatically in Canada, and then starting to happen in places like California, which is essentially the states enforcing gender affirming gender, and affirming gender parenting. So, they're trying to do this. They actually did try to do this in California. I think they might have passed it, which says that, if there's a divorce and there's a question about custody, judges should weigh which parent is affirming their child's gender and determining who to award custody to.
Mhm.
I think it's appalling, right? I think that's the state getting in there and actively encouraging and putting their
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that either.
and
Yeah.
I think that the right, and also I think that, underlying the concession there is a concession that this notion of gender is meaning and carries weight. And I think that as a society, we ought to be pushing the notion that you are quite correct that gender, as you've defined it, is a social construct, which is why we're going to ignore it, right? We're going to ignore whatever your idea. Like you think you're a woman. That's fascinating. You're obviously biologically female, so we're going to call you. We don't care what you've invented for personality for yourself. That's not going to dictate how others interact with you. So
people don't. Yeah, you don't have to call somebody or he or she. I would never say that you have to do that. Just from my personal standpoint, I don't care.
The thing is, that's what that's a goal of the trans movement. They want to get to that point. They did it. They were pretty close, darn close in Canada. And so I think it's, I was open to this, and then it is amazing. It's like one of those things where you think, oh, this slope is, slippery slope's a fallacy, right? Wrong. Actually, a lot of slopes are slippery. This one turned very, very slippery in about a 5-year period where, it went from, oh, you should probably be polite to what's your objection to males bashing in women's skulls?
Well, I guess what are we going to do though? Are we just going to check what's in everybody's pants going into a women's restroom? I think you would agree with me. There are some trans women you cannot tell based on just seeing somebody walking around, whether they're a man or a woman. So do we just make assumptions about people? Do we ask people to take their pants down, which obviously I would never want to?
I don't think anybody's saying that they need to take their pants down. I'm sure that, someone can figure out a more elegant enforcement mechanism if one becomes necessary.
I don't know how would you do that? How would you do that?
But I think you start with social, but that's actually a good answer to why social opprobrium? Why should we, I think one way is just to say, as a society, we think this is silly, and we're not, and so no, I'm not calling you by your pronouns, right? And anybody who tries to correct me on your pronouns, you just
people are entitled to do that. I wouldn't take that right away from anybody. I guess
I get that, but it's I think people ought, right? I affirmatively have changed my mind. I'm saying I think it is the right thing for society for people to reject others' attempts to impose preferred pronouns on them.
I hear you, Will. I think there's a lot of things that are right for society that people don't do. For example, I don't want to tell all women what to do with their own bodies, especially those that are raped or victims of incest. And my problem with so many on the far right is they're so hung up on this issue, like a Nancy Mace. But when it comes to, in some states in this country, almost half the states in this country, abortion's illegal. Okay. And then in some of those states, there's no exceptions. I think that's sick. And I think that's far more sick than what anybody thinks about, who's going into bathrooms. We're going to force a woman that's raped to have a child. We're going to force a woman that's been the victim of incest to have that child. I think that's sick. And another one of my issues is, a lot of people, not you, but a lot of people talk about drag queen reading, about how the sky is falling. And I ask these people, all right, can you name me a child that's ever been killed with drag queen? Of course they can't, right? They claim all these children are being indoctrinated. Well, I understand that. They're saying that children are being indoctrinated, but I never hear far-right Republicans say, don't go to church. Thousands of kids have been victims of horrible sex crimes in churches, but I never hear Republicans say, don't go to church.
Public schools. I'm not a religious person, so I'm an awkward defender of people of faith, but I'll still do it here. I think that yes, young, churches and schools are the first primary places where people who are interested in abusing kids look to. I don't think that's a reason to abolish public schools necessarily. There might be reasons here in public schools. I don't think that might be the one.
I'm not saying that either, for the record. I'm not saying we should abolish church or schools. All I'm simply saying is they want to abolish drag queen reading. And I've never heard of one story of a child that was dramatically changed for the rest of their life by listening to a drag queen read a book to them. But yet I never hear them talk about church and the thousands of kids that were molested.
I cannot fathom the mindset of someone who wants to dress up in what I think is a fundamentally sexual costume and read to children. I think it's bizarre. I'm sorry. I can't be sympathetic. I'm not sympathetic to Drag Queen Story Hour. I think it's a bizarre performance. I think parents shouldn't bring their kids to that sort of thing.
But Will, you know what I would say to that? If you have kids, I don't know if you do. If you do, don't bring them the drag queen reading then.
Right, but it's also like, I mean, do we open up it so that children can go buy pornography?
No, that's illegal.
Like it's
That's
obviously
illegal. That's
right,
illegal.
but like
That's
I
the law.
understand it's a sliding scale a little bit, but those two are closer
Right.
than maybe I think, maybe
Well, drag
like
queen
there's
shows,
corrupting the youth and preserving children's innocence,
right,
preserving their exposure to sexual content is something that I think we
right.
generally
But
think is a
I hear what
society
you're
should,
saying.
and we
I
don't
hear,
have the libertarian perspective.
I hear what you're saying, Will, but drag queen reading to kids, there's nobody taking their clothes off. At least that would be against the law. Drag queen shows are 18 and over and 21 and over. And I agree with you. No young children should ever be anywhere near that. I'm with you 100% when it comes to that, when it comes to pornography. All I'm saying is we live in a, we're supposed to live in a free country, right? If parents want to bring their kids to drag queen reading, I went to one of those because I wanted to see what it was all about.
Yeah.
The one I went to in Las Vegas was nothing sexual at all. Kids were eating, they were having fun. The only message I heard was be happy with who you are. And I don't think that's pushing anything on anybody. Now, if your position is, hey, I wouldn't want to bring my kids to that, I would never take that right away from you. I don't think anybody should be forced to take their kids to drag queen reading. I just wish that some people would be more focused on more issues that maybe are more prevalent to children.
I think there are more important issues out there, obviously. Like I wouldn't say this is my number one or my number two or my number 10, right?
But,
so
what would you say to Nancy Mace then that's tweeted about it like 500 times in the last month?
She's a representative. She gets to pick her issues, and this one actually is relevant to her personally because she, there's suddenly a trans person in the house that is trying to use her bathroom, and she really doesn't like it, and she's like, "No, okay, I understand." And I mean, it's it's a house rules issue. It's not like it's actually tangible for her in this context. So I understand why she's focused on it.
Understood. Go ahead. Sorry if I interrupted.
No, I was finished my point.
Cool.